Welcome to StopFake, the place where we set the record straight on Russian disinformation about Ukraine. In this week's digest, we debunk yet another fake claim about the Ukrainian military shelling the OSCE monitoring mission. We also set the record straight about EU sanctions, and we expose a deceitful claim about the iconic Odessa Film Studios. So let's get to the details. Following the latest escalation in fighting in eastern Ukraine, in which 9 Ukrainian soldiers were killed, Russian media have been disseminating fakes claiming that Ukrainian armed forces are shelling OSCE patrols and preventing the monitors from completing their work. The latest OSCE reports, meanwhile, have no mention of any shelling. Responding to StopFake's inquiry about the alleged obstruction, the OSCE said no shelling had taken place. OSCE's latest report does mention an explosion of uncertain origin, quote-unquote, close to where the OSCE monitors were working last week. Now, OSCE monitors filed daily reports describing the situation on the ground. These reports are open to the public and available on the organization's website. These latest claims that Ukrainian military were shooting at OSCE patrols are based on statements issued by the Defense Ministry of the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic. The Russian proxies also claim that Ukrainian military tried to intercept an OSCE drone. Some Russian media also reported that OSCE patrols were fired on in the town of Yasunovate. The OSCE Special Monitoring Mission report for July 21, 2017 states that right after the launch of a drone in the town of Vasilievka, observers heard a loud explosion of uncertain origin 100 to 200 meters to the north. The drone's flight was immediately interrupted. 2 Donetsk People's Republic members were noticed nearby. The OSCE mission in Ukraine reports nearly daily incidents of obstruction to its work in the occupied territories. It is regularly prevented from entering various towns and villages in occupied or separatist-controlled territory, and the self-proclaimed republics have accused the OSCE of not being objective. In a Facebook statement, the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission called for the removal of all impediments to their work and demanded that the mission be allowed to move freely to carry out their mandate and not be restricted from doing their job when they report on facts that some deem uncomfortable. StopFake has debunked several fake claims about Ukrainian military firing on OSCE monitors. Russia's Defense Ministry television channel Zvezda announced this week that the European Union would impose sanctions on the United States in response to Washington's new sanctions against Moscow. Citing an anonymous Brussels source, Zvezda presented this information as a done deal. The anonymous source, according to Zvezda, claims the EU will limit American companies' access to European banks in response to U.S. sanctions against Russia. However, there have been no announcements from the EU about possible sanctions against the United States. The European Union has, however, expressed concern that the new American sanctions could negatively impact the economy of European countries. The new sanctions against the Russian Federation impose a ban on, quote, investment in projects for pipeline energy exports implemented with the participation of Russian state-owned companies. This measure directly concerns European companies that cooperate with Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipeline project. Speaking about the new U.S. sanctions on July 26, European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker said that while the EU fully supports Russia's sanctions, the new American bill could have unintended unilateral effects on EU energy security. If the U.S. does not take European concerns into account sufficiently, the EU would act appropriately. Juncker, however, said nothing about EU sanctions against the United States. Russia today cites German economy minister Brigitte Zypries about retaliatory EU responses. Now, what Zypries actually said was that she hoped the U.S. administration had not moved on the sanctions with a view to harm Europe and that a trade war between the EU and the U.S. and Russia would be, quote-unquote, very bad. Another Zvezda fake this week is about the Odessa Film Studio, which, according to that television channel, which belongs to the Russian Defense Ministry, by the way, is that the Ukrainian government will close down this iconic film company. Zvezda says the film studio is one of many government companies slated for closing. Zvezda's article is filled with outrage and judgment, lamenting the fate of one of the oldest film studios in the post-Soviet world. The president of the Russian Film Critics Guild, along with a prominent Russian film director, added their voices to the general condemnation of the studio's alleged closing, calling it a huge loss for world culture. But the Odessa Film Studio is not about to be closed. Ukraine's Ministry of Economic Development and Trade recently published its strategic plan for the future of state-owned enterprises. 1,255 companies are recommended for liquidation or reorganization. And the Odessa Film Studio is not on that list. Currently, Ukraine's State Property Fund, the government body that oversees state-owned companies, controls more than 50% of the Odessa Film Studio shares. Founded in 1919, the studio is currently a joint stock company, and it is on the list of companies recommended for privatization. That's it for this week. Be vigilant, beware of fakes, and if you spot any, send them to us for a truth autopsy. Remember, if you value your brain, don't consume fake news. I'm Marko Suprun, and this is StopFake. Thanks for watching.